Just because a quarterback won a Super Bowl doesn't mean that they are the reason that they won.
Brock Osweiler signed a 4-year deal with the Texans worth $72 million with $37 million guaranteed.
Today, we're taking a look at 10 NFL quarterbacks who should have never gotten the deals that they got. First in 2010 with Donovan McNabb, and again later in that decade, this time with Kirk Cousins. Starting with the former, the contract that Washington gave McNabb was truly one of the more bizarre contracts the NFL has ever seen. Not only because McNabb was heading on to the back nine of his 30s and his performance was already starting to falter, but also because it was doled out to him halfway through his disastrous first year in Washington. It really just made no sense. I mean, just 2 weeks before giving him the contract, Washington benched McNabb in the final minutes of a close defeat to the Indianapolis Colts. And then out of nowhere, they gave a quarterback Mike Shanahan had deemed unfit to lead the offense in the pivotal moments of a game a 5-year, $78 million extension. Then just a few weeks later, he was relegated to third-string duties. Really, just a great use of salary cap by Washington there. They did, however, wise up and deal him to Minnesota the following offseason. McNabb went 1-5 as a starter up north and then fizzled out of the league altogether. The situation was a bit different, but a few years later, Washington made the same basic mistake of overpaying a quarterback not fit to deliver. In this case, it was the aforementioned and often scrutinized Kirk Cousins. Now, in Washington's defense, it was a tricky situation they were in. At the time, the organization was in many ways reeling from RG3's disappearing act. As a rookie, he looked like he was on the path to a perennial Pro Bowl career. But injuries took a toll on his performance and put a rift between him and the team. And during that time of vulnerability, Cousins did step up. And he greatly overperformed the rookie contract he signed as a third-round pick. So in 2016, when he was scheduled to hit the open market, Washington was under a great deal of pressure to keep him in town, despite the questions that surrounded his ability to truly take a team to the next level. And as a result, they franchise tagged him twice for north of $40 million over those 2 years, which was a steep price tag at the time. Interestingly, Washington isn't the only franchise to have made the same mistake of paying Kirk Cousins. The Minnesota Vikings did the same thing in 2018, when Washington finally came to its senses and let Kirk hit the open market. Minnesota gave Cousins a shocking 3-year, $84 million deal, all of which was fully guaranteed, and that netted the Vikes one playoff win. While their two respective fan bases probably still haven't recovered from the emotional trauma of having Kirk Cousins under center for their favorite team, it made Cousins over $160 million, which relative to his ability and success is insane. Joe Flacco was a classic case of the whole "what have you done for me lately" mantra working in reverse. The Ravens quarterback went into the 2012 season looking for a long-term extension after performing reasonably well through the duration of his modest rookie contract. His representation and the team, however, appeared to be on completely different pages as to how much the young signal caller was worth. Rather than compromising his potential earnings in exchange for the stability of an extension, Flacco decided to bet on himself by playing his 5th and final season on his rookie deal instead of inking an extension before the season. And while his regular season numbers were right on par with what he had done for Baltimore every season after his rookie year, Flacco went on an insane run during the postseason and led the Ravens to 4 straight wins and a Super Bowl trophy. Flacco's leverage skyrocketed, and the team eventually caved to the pressure, handing him a massive 6-year, $120+ million deal. And somewhat predictably, Flacco fell right back to earth after signing that contract. Heck, if anything, his performance actually suffered. In 2013, he threw more interceptions than touchdowns for the first time in his career. And he only won 10 games one more time after hitting that metric 4 out of his first 5 years in the league. Now, admittedly, Baltimore was in a tough position there. So much so that you'd have to think that they knew the contract was a mistake when they were drawing it up. This is not too dissimilar to what we saw happen with Nick Foles after his miraculous Super Bowl run with the Philadelphia Eagles. Only in Foles' case, the Eagles avoided being the one to pay him because they already had Carson Wentz. Instead, the Jacksonville Jaguars took the bait and overpaid for a veteran journeyman, giving him a 4-year deal worth $88 million with over 50 of it guaranteed. This was one of the least fruitful endeavors on this entire list. Foles battled injury all year and started just 4 games, throwing 3 touchdowns and 2 interceptions along the way, before eventually being dealt to Chicago for a compensatory 4th-round pick. Talk about money well spent. Jimmy G and Jared Goff's journey to generational wealth, though, well, that's a different story. They were both the beneficiaries of 2 teams that felt that they were a solid signal color away from true contention in an overinflated quarterback market. After an abysmal rookie season under Jeff Fisher, Goff blossomed in Sean McVay's system and started putting up very impressive numbers that earned him trips to the Pro Bowl in 2017 and 2018. But if you watched him play, it was pretty clear to most that he was truly the definition of a system quarterback. This was put on display for the world to see during his Super Bowl matchup with Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots in 2019, mere months after the Rams misguidedly signed him to a 4-year, $134 million extension with a whopping $110 million guaranteed. In fact, at the time, that was the most guaranteed money given in NFL history. A decision the Rams surely regretted. Goff disappeared in the Super Bowl, largely because Belichick's defensive scheme dared the Rams to beat them with Goff's arm. Goff's struggles increased during the following season, and then during the 2021 offseason, LA decided enough was enough, and they dealt him to Detroit. Jimmy G's track record of success in the NFL was even more limited than Goff's. Garoppolo first entered the national consciousness in 2016, when he filled in New England while Tom Brady was suspended for Deflategate. He started 2 games before being sidelined with shoulder injury, and hey, to his credit, he performed pretty well. By the time Garoppolo was cleared to return to action, Brady had returned from suspension. So that was the last action he saw until 2017, after he was dealt to San Francisco for a 2nd-round pick. He made his 49ers debut in Week 13 and led the team to 5 straight victories, making him the first quarterback to start his career 7-0 since Big Ben back in 2004. And apparently, that was more than enough for the 49ers, who signed him to a 5-year, $137 million deal, the largest deal in NFL history on an annual basis at the time of signing. Now, I want you to think about that. 7 starts with good but not great numbers, and the 49ers just backed up the Brinks truck for him. In the time since, he's been exactly that. Good, but not great. And that's when he's actually on the field, which is no sure thing, as he's played just over half the games in his 4 full seasons with San Fran. I understand the importance of finding a franchise quarterback, and that sometimes you have to roll the dice on a guy. But I bet even Garoppolo himself was shocked at how much the Niners overpaid for him. Actually, while we're on the subject of Garoppolo, how about the legendary Matt Flynn, who parlayed a garbage time start at the end of the 2011 season with the Packers into a contract with Seattle that, they undoubtedly regretted handing him almost immediately. During Week 17 against the lowly Detroit Lions, Flynn and the second stringers lit it up. He threw for 480 yards and 6 touchdowns, both of which were Packers records en route to a 45-41 victory. In the following offseason, he signed a 3-year deal with the Seahawks worth $20.5 million, only to lose the starting job during training camp to rookie 3rd-round pick Russell Wilson. And yet, somehow, Flynn's tenure with Seattle was less disappointing than Brock Osweiler's stay in Houston. The lanky quarterback had signed a 4-year contract with the Houston Texans after moderate success on an amazingly talented Broncos team. The deal was worth $72 million, 37 of it being guaranteed. Now keep in mind, this came after a 2015 season in which his team won the Super Bowl, but he was only a part-time starter, toggling back and forth with the ghost of Peyton Manning. His numbers were decent, just under a 62% completion rate for 1,967 yards for 10 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. But that was with a very solid offense around him and an all-time great defense to complement Denver's offensive scheme. when you actually watched him, Brock did very little to inspire hope that he was destined to be anything other than a journeyman or average starter at best. Of course, that didn't stop the Texans from opening up their checkbook because, well, they're the Texans.
Osweiler is benched. Tom Savage is coming into the game, and the fans here in Houston go nuts.
Osweiler truly deserves special recognition here because his contract was such a disappointment that Houston traded him to Cleveland the following offseason and had to give away 2 draft picks for the Browns to take on his salary. Yikes. Mike Glennon, another 6'7" anomaly of a quarterback, might have gotten an even more ridiculous deal than Osweiler. In 2017, Glennon signed a 3-year deal worth $45 million, 18 of it paid up front, to play for the Chicago Bears, after Chicago essentially won a bidding war against themselves. The market for Glennon couldn't have been any colder. He hadn't come close to playing a full season since his rookie year in 2013, which, to be fair, was pretty solid, but it was nothing to write home about. And then he lost the job to Josh McCown and Jameis Winston. Talk about an obvious red flag not to sign a guy. Alright, and last but not least, our honorary old-timer Neil O'Donnell, who in many ways was a man well ahead of his time, fleecing the New York Jets after a run to the Super Bowl with the Pittsburgh Steelers the year before. O'Donnell hit the market at the right time as the Jets were coming off a 3-13 season and were desperate for a quarterback. As a result, New York gave him a $25 million contract, which was huge for the time and got almost nothing in return. In 1996, he started just 6 games due to injury, lost all of them, and the team as a whole floundered, finishing 1-15. His performance did improve slightly the following year after Bill Parcells took over, but he eventually lost his job to Glenn Foley and was cut after 2 seasons. But which NFL quarterback do you think should have never been paid? Did we miss anyone? Join us in the comment section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton. And hey, we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea, because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.